Welcome to Patriot's Lament right here on KFAR, where for the next hour we're going to be talking about liberty and what is happening to it here in the United States, specifically focused in on Fairbanks, Alaska. Joining me in the studio, by the way, I'm Steve Floyd, the man with the face made for radio. In the studio with me is Josh Bennett, one of the proprietors of Bighorn Enterprises and the sponsors of the show. For all of your trucking and construction needs, call 451-7310. Also in the studio with us this morning is Dave Giesel from the Fairbanks Campaign for Liberty. Gentlemen, good.
Economics wizard extraordinaire.
You know what? I thought they took away his wizard's wand as far as that goes.
He found another one.
All right, good to go. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. And what is on the agenda today?
Jesse Ventura left.
Well, he said he's going to
Leaving?
leave. I don't know if he's actually left yet, but he's also been known for being a bit flamboyant. We'll see if he leaves when he actually leaves. What are the circumstances around Jesse Ventura announcing that he's going to leave the United States?
He was filing a lawsuit against the TSA in federal court, and the court threw the lawsuit out.
In the background for that, why did he file the lawsuit? He had a
TSA abuse.
Well,
yeah.
Well, he had a hip replacement, and so every single time he goes through the screening, he gets singled out as if somehow he's got a bomb in his body. And even though he presents proof, look, I've had operations, I've got replacement parts, they continue to give him a hard time every single time he flies. He hasn't even flown commercial now in the last several years. He refuses to do so. He filed a suit saying that what the TSA is doing is unconstitutional, yada, yada, yada. They threw it out. And so he said, fine, I'm not going to live here anymore. Now, he took it a step farther. He called it the Fascist States of America, and he said that when the national anthem is played, what's he said he's going to do?
He will stand up and face away from the flag and hold his fists up.
That's pretty revolutionary.
It's about time.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I posted on my Facebook page yesterday a quote from John Lennon that says this: when it gets down to having to use violence, then you're playing the system's game. The establishment will irritate you, pull your beard, flick your face to make you fight, because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you. The only thing they don't know how to handle is nonviolence and humor. And I had somebody sound off that I'm just repeating garbage, revolutionary garbage, by saying that. And I'm befuddled as to how somebody who is espousing nonviolence is revolutionary garbage.
Because everybody thinks that they're just going to wait until it gets violent and then they're going to pick up their gun and go win the war. The thing that they neglect is there's far fewer of them and they have much smaller guns.
Or they're going to grab their 72-hour bag and go hit the hills for 3 days while it all blows over. That's my 72-hour Patriots. Yep. My favorite one.
Is that kind of like Sunshine Patriots? It'll throw back to Thomas Paine there. Well, you know, are we really at a point where we need to start facing away from the flag and raising our fists? Like
no, we're way past that. But it's nice. You know, it's a nice token gesture at this point.
I thought it was interesting. You had a caller yesterday talking about the new TSA machines they're bringing in and how they're not quite so bad. And
right.
It was like, in my mind, it was okay. Here we are. We finally capitulated enough, and they're coming in and they do the worst, and then they come in with something not quite so bad. So we'll just, roll over, take it again, and we do over and over and over. But I mean, that's natural for people to do that. Even Jefferson said that in the Declaration of Independence.
The normalcy bias, isn't it? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Everything is going to be just fine. You know, as long as what did Jefferson say about the chains that bind us? I'm trying to. I don't have my.
Here.
Go ahead if you've got it.
I'm looking for it.
All right. Well,
dead air.
Yeah, exactly. Dun dun dun. We're trying to find our quotes. You know, it's interesting to me when we think about the founders, and we tend to almost glorify them as if they're some kind of heroes, but they were men like we are, and you know, they had not just weeks or months, but years leading up to the revolution, in which they had time to kind of refine their positions and talk about it and think about what it would be like if they ran things instead of the king, And I don't know if there are enough people doing that these days to actually, I mean, how many people do you know? I mean, obviously, this room excluded. There are quite a few people in this room who do that. But how many people outside of this room do you know that actually spend time thinking about what is going to happen if or / when the United States fails?
Well, one of the things they did is they just kind of crystallized the thought that was in a lot of other people's minds. So I think there are probably quite a few people out there. I think a lot of younger people. I think most of the older people are sitting there scared about the status quo changing. That's just my observation. And the younger people are like, let it fall down. The sooner the better. But
enter Occupy Wall Street, and you've got a whole bunch of young people.
Yeah, and those kids aren't representative of the higher IQ kids out there, of which there's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just not that vocal about it. They're just kind of treading water. They're like, and then we'll get our day in the sun. So there's a lot out there. They're just not vocal necessarily. And the founders, they just kind of wrote down what some of the thoughts were at the time. They were revolutionary in that they were willing to write it down and put it out there and put their name on it. But other people were thinking the same thing.
Right now, like what you said with the older generation, their whole life is invested in the system.
Absolutely.
Their whole life is invested in it. So, of course, you're going to see a disconnect on do you want to think about it actually collapsing if everything you know is invested in that system? You don't want to. If we're the new generations that are coming out, the younger kids, they haven't been fully invested in it yet. So, and they see where it's screwed up, so why do they want to go down that path? Start somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's mistakenly characterized as the kids not caring. The kids they don't care about saving the Social Security system. Well, that's probably true because it can't be saved. The only people who care about saving it are the people who are going to try and get the benefits right before it collapses, right? Of course, the kids aren't going to care about something inane as reforming Social Security. Give me a break.
They don't want to prop up the Ponzi scheme.
Right. Why would they care about that? It's impossible. And so I think that gets mistaken for apathy a lot of the time. But it's just a difference in perspective.
They just don't want their wealth stolen.
Yeah, right. Or they don't want to. I mean, their life is too short to waste, tilting at windmills, like my parents' generation has been doing for the last 30 years. And look where it's gotten us.
Wow. 458-TALK is the number. Let's go to the phones and see what's going on this morning. Good morning. All right, they didn't hold. I find myself, when you talk about tilting at windmills, Dave, we all need, I think there's something innate in a man. We all need to have a cause. We all need to have something to fight for. And you look at, your parents' generation and generally speaking, we're talking about the anti-Vietnam War, right? In terms of the major movement that got a lot of people sucked into it. And after our troops were pulled out, it's kind of like, well, now what? And a lot of them then went into business, the whole yuppie thing. Well, if you don't really have a good grasp on why you're going into business, if you don't have a really good grasp on why you want to work, why you want to make money, then you're going to end up floundering around. And I think right now there are an awful lot of people that are floundering.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even the yuppie thing, that was fine. The thing that was goofy was how gullible that generation was. I mean, look at this. They reelected Reagan. I mean, how stupid can you be, right? They elect this guy with all this rhetoric, and then he basically starts piling on debt, and they reelect him because of his rhetoric, right? And then they elect his vice president, and he raises their taxes on him. I mean, so the gullibility of that generation and their belief in institutions, which is what's got us where we are now, and now they're the ones clamoring to save the institutions, is laughable to kids my age.
Well, and then
it's a joke.
You look at how Reagan has been deified by the Republican Party as if somehow he embodied true conservatism. And yet, if I look at what conservatism means in terms of the writings and in terms of the actual what does it mean to be a conservative, I'm not sure many people know what it means anymore. And
his rhetoric was terrific as far as that goes, right? If you talk about like the old right before Bill Kristol and Buckley and the CIA took over the right-wing movement through National Review.
Back to the Goldwaters.
Oh yeah, even before Goldwater. Goldwater was a shill, basically. If you look at his rhetoric when he ran for president, again, his rhetoric was great. But before he ran for president and after he ran for president, he was not about individual liberty or responsibility. When he ran for president, it was great, though. Same with Reagan. And so they had the rhetoric, but the policies were all controlled by Irving Kristol, Bill Kristol, and Buckley, and all the Buckleyites, who are Trotskyites, right? These guys actually learned directly from Trotsky the techniques for basically co-opting a movement, which is what they did to the old right and what you would call old classical conservatism, which is actually came out of the classical liberal movement.
And that's the thing right there. You just hit on a key that if most people, when they read something that is called conservative, if you actually break it down, it's actually what most people would call libertarian. If you look at the principles of liberty that are espoused by the so-called conservative movement, well, that is libertarianism. And yet libertarians are put into a box of, these are crazy people, because so often along with the libertarian movement comes along a push, we should legalize drugs, we should allow people to do whatever they want to in their bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it turns off a lot of the social conservative people who, I don't know why, they seem to think that it would be wrong for somebody to come in and legislate what you can do with your thermostat, but it's okay for them to turn around and legislate what somebody else does in the bedroom. I'm not sure where would you draw the line? Why is it okay to do one and not the other?
It's just a disconnect. It's an incongruity. But the prohibition movement, that was a progressive movement for prohibition. People don't remember that. That was the belief that the state could make people better by pointing guns at them for certain behavior. That was not part of the classical liberal tradition, which is what we would call we wouldn't. Conservatism today is fascism, straight up. There's no difference, but it's what people would confuse for conservatism today. And it was called liberalism. It was called liberalism because it was based on liberty. Right? That's the root. That is the root word. Exactly. It was live and let live.
And you know what, Dave? I'm going to have to back you up here just a little bit. I need you to define fascism, because right now I think that most people, when you bring up the word fascist, they think Hitler. They think, it's hate rhetoric. It's let's go kill the Jews, and that's not what fascism is.
No, that was genocide. Is what that was. Fascism was the socioeconomic system, I guess you could call it, which is private ownership with state control. And so fascism is a conservative movement in that when you have a shift from a free-ish market society to fascism, the people who are in power and the people who own the major industries stay in power. They consolidate, right? And they become politicized. That's basically what fascism is. They maintain control over their industries, but their industries become politicized in that they have to get approval from the state. They're not controlled by the state, but they have to have the state's approval. So we have things like the military-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex. We have our Siemens, our GEs, our Boeings, our Lockheeds, and the Occupy Wall Street people correctly identify these as political institutions. But what they forget is the reason those institutions became political is because of the government itself, which has become a fascist system. Now, socialism, on the other hand, is state control and ownership of the means of production. It is a revolutionary type movement. So when you have a socialist revolution, the people who own the industries get kicked out and the state comes in and takes over directly, right? Or the state appoints its own minions to take over. So this is like what we saw in the Soviet Union in 1917, right? And so that's the fundamental difference. And people mistakenly think that the U.S. went socialist under Roosevelt, right? Not true. Not true. The U.S. became, if anything, more fascist under Roosevelt. None of the captains of industry lost their positions. None of the policies, the Federal Trade Commission and the trust busting that had gone on earlier, none of those actually removed the people in industry from their industries. And I don't think they should have been removed, but I don't think the industry should have been politicized. What those movements did is they were a response to public demand for state control of these industries. And so the state said, yeah, okay, we'll control these industries so we can get reelected. And what they actually did was they consolidated power in those industries. There's a quote from Andrew Carnegie where he said he was talking about his steel industry, and he said capital is safer in the hands of the state than it is subject to competition. And what he meant by that was he would rather lobby for state control of his his steel empire than compete in the market, because even with massive state control, at least he would be able to hold on to a majority, a major market share, whereas subject to competition, he could never do this. And people think that Roosevelt and the progressives, turned America into a socialist, communist society. They did not. It was consolidation of power in the people who already had power in industry, which is fascism.
And if you look at the rise of fascism in America during the 1930s, I mean, there what was it, Madison Square Garden, where they filled the place full of Americans wearing Nazi armbands. I mean, it was a real movement, and it was a real presence. And what happened to those people? Did they all just disappear when World War II really kicked off?
No, they just took the armbands off and replaced them with Republican Party ones.
Oh, Shazam! 458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the show. Who's this? Are you there? Are you there? All right, we'll go to the next one. Good morning. All right. 458 Talk. We got a couple of people trying to get through, but then either they can't hear me or they go off and find something else to do while they're waiting on hold. With all the rhetoric about who's a fascist and who's a communist and who's a socialist, I think what a lot of people don't really grasp hold of is that whole ist at the end of it. Whenever you surrender your own personal liberty, whenever you surrender your ability to make a decision to somebody else, you are becoming an ist.
Yeah, well, there's one type of ist that doesn't do that, but we won't talk about that. It's a scary word.
Well, an anarch? What?
A voluntarist. Let's say that. Somebody who believes in voluntary interaction between people. But, it's an important distinction as long as the words are used correctly. None of the words, capitalist, socialist, communist, fascist, none of those words are used correctly today if you go by a dictionary definition. It's all just rhetoric. Like, everything is rhetoric. There's literally no point in turning on the TV or the radio except Saturday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. on KFAR 660. So, because it's all rhetoric. Yeah. There's nobody defines their terms, right?
Exactly.
They get on TV and they go blah blah blah. Racist, fascist, communist, socialist.
Conservative,
liberal, whatever.
What does it even mean?
Right, and right, and it loses any meaning because there's no definition of terms. And understanding the history too, if you confuse FDR with socialism, right, with state ownership of the means of production instead of consolidation of state power in the hands of corporations that are no longer subject to competition. If you ask the wrong questions and have the wrong premises, it doesn't matter what answers you get, right? If you ask the wrong question and you get the right answer, it still doesn't help you. And so understanding those distinctions is important.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning. Welcome to Patriot's Lament.
Hello.
Hey, who is this?
Hi, Tim.
Tim, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Would you give your opinion of the difference between socialism? I just tuned in. I don't know, you've been talking about some interesting subjects here. Tell me the difference between what's the difference between a socialist and a communist? And I'll hang up. I'm driving. I'll listen. Bye.
Thanks.
I guess communism would be the socialist philosophy applied to an entire economic system, right? So if you took the idea of state ownership and you applied it to all aspects of the society, then you would get communism or the commune. Socialism in and of itself is just the belief that all goods should be socially owned, and then when you take that to its logical conclusion, you end up with communism.
And
despotic.
I mean, it could, in theory, you could have non-despotic communism if everyone had the same value scales, right?
Right. Well, look at the Puritans, though. When the Pilgrims came across, they were the first communist government basically in the United States, and they all basically had the same philosophy or theology or whatever, and it failed miserably.
This is what a lot of people fail to.
Totally.
It doesn't get reported in the history books. That is a very good point, Josh, that the Pilgrims were actually communists. Then when they came over, they held everything in common. They all went out and worked in the fields. And, gee, if human nature takes over, I don't feel like working so hard today, Dave. Would you go and work my field for me?
Right. It's based on this. I mean, it's based on this utopic idea that if everyone had the same value skills, if everyone valued everything the same, it would work, right? But by nature, we all value things differently. And this is where the division of labor and mutually beneficial exchange and comparative advantage and all these economic phenomena come out of, which is some people are better at some things than other people. And some people enjoy things that other people don't enjoy. And that's why you trade, right? And, maybe you're good at doing one thing and somebody's good at doing something else, and so you focus on what you can do and then you trade. And so, communism flies in the face of that. And it's a breakdown of the division of labor, and it's trying to take nature, which is non-egalitarian, and shove it into an egalitarian box. And that's why it doesn't work.
It failed even with even as most basic premise, survival. It failed even then. I mean, all they were worried about was surviving, and even then, the communist system.
And
failed.
the Pilgrims. I mean, the very first winter. I mean, you hear about how they all, they starved to death. Well, the reason why was because there wasn't enough harvest, because not enough people worked hard enough, because it was all this communal property. Very next year, they said, okay, forget this. We're divvying it up. This is yours. This is yours. This is yours. This time, if you don't work hard enough, you're the one that's not going to starve. There's not going to be somebody down there who starves because you ate too much and didn't work hard enough.
They never really got rid of that. Totally, that system. I mean, even when they divvied it up and let people fend for themselves, so to speak, they still failed, because ultimately their governor, Bradford, he was communist at heart. I mean, Pilgrims were horrible people. No matter how you look at it. And they failed, and their colony disappeared. Ultimately dwindled, because there are other colonies around them that were totally free, had no government whatsoever, and those people left and went to where they could prosper.
We got about a minute before the break here. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Yeah, this is Wild Hogs, Frank Kearney, but you got a minute before the break. I'd like to hold on there.
All right, we can do that, Frank. Thank you very much. All right, gentlemen, as we're coming up toward the Fox News here at the bottom of the hour, let's think for just a moment about action points. Already this morning we've talked about fascism, communism, socialism, anarchism. What kind of an action point can we draw out of this, besides the fact of going and looking at a dictionary, because that's not really going to help you very much?
Okay, if you want to understand the history of these movements and the left and right in America, there's a terrific book. It's called The Betrayal of the American Right by Murray Rothbard. And he goes through what the right has become today and what it used to be, and classical liberalism and all that history that I tried to condense into 5 minutes. It's a terrific book, The Betrayal of the American Right by Murray Rothbard.
You've got it on Patriot's Lament right here on KFAR. We'll be right back after the Fox News here on KFAR. We are a local talk radio.
You're listening to Fox News on Local Talk Radio, KFAR.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. As the job crisis continues, help is drying up for the unemployed. With most jobless Americans out of work for so long, they aren't getting unemployment benefits anymore. The government says that money kept more than $3 million from slipping into poverty last year. And the Penn State community is shaken by sex abuse allegations.
A former Penn State football coordinator who helped lead the team to 2 national titles and then became known for his work with at-risk children is now accused of child sex abuse. Jerry Sandusky facing 40 counts, prosecutors calling him a sexual predator who used his position at the university and in the community to prey on young boys.
Fox Radio's Lisa Brady also charged
Penn State athletic director Tim Curley and another administrator with perjury and failure to report suspected abuse.
Sandusky, through his attorney, denying the allegations which originally surfaced more than a decade ago. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Don't let your coworkers call it hate radio just because we question authority. We are KFAR, and we will keep on critiquing regardless of who's in power.
I'm red, I'm black, begins tonight. On stage with borrowed angel's sword and a crossword puzzle of stolen chords. I'm alive, but those I love are gone.
All right, there on the music bed, that was Tom Morello. It begins tonight. Does anybody know who Tom Morello is in this room?
We do know.
You do not, because I tell you who he is. He's the guitarist / bass player from Rage Against the Machine, and he is a self-avowed socialist / anarchist. And, you know, it's interesting because so many times when people hear the word anarchist, they immediately jump to thinking of somebody like a socialist anarchist. And what is the difference? Can you tell me that real quick, Dave?
Well, the original anarchist movements were, I mean, the first ones to go big politically were in Spain in the late 1800s. And those were fundamentally socialist movements. And so they were anti-state in that they opposed the status quo, but they wanted a different status quo that was still in control. So they really, you know, anarchy, if you break it down to its root words, it's an absence of rulers, right? It's not chaos or anything like that. It's just an absence of rulers if you break it down to its two Greek root words. But that's not actually what the original Spanish anarchists wanted. They just wanted different rulers. And so anyway, that movement made it into the U.S. There were a few early thinkers in the early 20th century here who started playing with those ideas and developing them out. And then you had the libertarian school of thought, which emerged as the conservative movement turned into a fascist movement. And then you have guys like Murray Rothbard and Frank Chodorov and Albert Nock and thinkers like this. And they decided to take that word and recycle it without the authoritarian connotations, because they realized that word was incompatible with authoritarianism, which is what anarcho-socialism is.
You sure do read a lot, Dave.
You do.
All right, we got Frank Turney on the phone still. Frank, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, boy. Dave, you sure give me an education of things I've never even been aware of. But anyway, I want to make a clarification first. Yesterday on Friday Free Day, I called in regarding an Officer Lamb that was fired for misconduct. I want to apologize. It was Officer Lambert. I want to make that clear. Anyway, we talk a lot about jury nullification, but I like to talk a little bit about the Fifth Amendment when it comes to grand juries. There's two functions, indictment and the other one, presentment. Presentment is when the grand jury independently can investigate crimes and government abuses. And if you go to Article 1, Section 8 of the Alaska's Constitution, it mentions presentment and indictment. And under presentment, it says the power of the grand jury to investigate and make recommendations concerning public welfare and safety shall never be suspended. This is being abused by judges and prosecutors. I remember, Steve, when you had Guttenberg and Kawasaki on, my gosh, for 2 years straight, I asked him to investigate why judges were abusing that role of presentment, and they never did get back to me, but I thank Senator John Cowgill's assistant, Reneva Moss, and she agreed with me. I found an article in 2001, Community Perspective, recognizing the service of grand juries by Judge Steinkruger. She only mentioned indictment. She failed to mention the other important thing, presentment on the checks and balances of government abuses. This has been going on for years. This is one of our checks and balances. Let's say if you, as citizens, you have a complaint of government abuse, and you're supposed to be able to write to the grand jury and the foreman of the grand jury, and they're supposed to investigate those abuses, and the jury evidently votes whether they investigate or not investigate. This has been abused and abused over and over, that Fifth Amendment. And over the years, I've brought this up to the state and the Senate, and they just kind of shuffled it off, except Senator John Cowgill agreed that it has been abused.
Frank, wouldn't it be true that if indictment were the only role of the state grand jury, they would just basically be a rubber stamp for the state DA at that point?
Amen. That's what's happening. What we got is a bunch of sheeple in there go along with the district attorney. But the problem is too many people, when they're subpoenaed to the grand jury, they don't know what their powers are and their responsibilities, and they become sheeple and rubber stamps for the government. But that is an important role. In fact, our founding fathers, they left that role in there for the checks and balance on government.
Yeah, I was on a grand jury, Frank, here a few years ago, and it was a joke. It was sad. I was saddened to be on it. I was glad at the time, and because I thought, all right, I'm going to be on a grand jury. And when it was all over with, I was pretty sad because it was just a rubber stamp. It was just, you had 18 people and they only needed like 12 or 13 of them to say, yeah, well,
right.
You know how the masses are. If the government says it, it must have happened. Look what happened. I mean, we can see that recently with the 241 case. They said it happened. It happened. Go ahead and prosecute them.
Yeah, when I came up here in 1982 and 1984, of course, from Oregon, I was on the governor's task force in corrections, so I knew what the power of the grand jury was all about. And I actually went to a judge here, and after I toured the Fairbanks Youth Facility, they were stacking up kids in like cordwood at that time. They were sending them to McLaughlin House. There was no programs for the girls and boys, and so I toured the facility. And I wrote to the grand jury, and actually the grand jury subpoenaed me. And at that time, the grand jury, the district attorney was Harry Davis, and he told the grand jury, now you're going out to the youth facility, I don't want you talking to any of these youths. Well, I spoke up right then. I said, it's none of the district attorney's business. You have the power as a grand jury to investigate and talk to those youths. And that's exactly what happened. And what happened is, about a year later, the grand jury submitted their report and their findings to the state legislature, and they made strong recommendations to the governor and the legislatures. They made changes. It took about 2 or 3 years. Finally, they got programs out there. They separated, and they got now a lot of the girls don't have to go to McLaughlin House. They got programs out there. I don't know how it is today, but that's one of the functions us citizens can do. Just one citizen can make a difference if they wanted to, but the problem is you get people like this News Minus. I asked, at that time in 2001, I'd like to have a community perspective on the other role besides just indictment. I was denied by the News Miner. I just want to throw that out. I think that's an important function that our founding fathers left us with, was the grand jury to investigate government, whether it be police officers, elected officials, or government employees. That's what it's there for.
Yes.
And thank you for letting me air that.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thanks, Frank.
458-TALK is the number. You've got it on Patriot's Lament. And if you'd like to call in, you can reach us, of course, by phone. And also, what is the blog spot?
The website is patriotslament.blogspot.com.
And the email for Patriots Lament is?
patriotslament@gmail.com.
You know,
I kind of neglected the blog this week, so my apologies.
For shame.
Mine too.
What are you, do you have a job or something?
Yeah.
Why don't you just quit your job, go out and pitch a tent somewhere and protest? I mean, isn't that what...
In blog.
It's too cold up here.
In blog.
If I lived in California,
All right.
You know what's sad, what Frank was talking about, how he always asks these different legislators, and we've heard him on the radio. He comes, or at any forum you go to where they have a legislators in a forum where people going to be want to be elected, and he'll ask them pointed questions about the Constitution or jury rights, mostly about jury rights, jury nullification, and he's always frustrated because they usually are against it. But I think what the one thing that we don't realize, maybe more and more we're seeing it, because I've been asking a lot of potential legislators and even challenged legislators that are in office right now. They don't even know what the Constitution is. I've been told that by some of them. Well, I don't really understand the Constitution.
Yeah, can you tell us your story from that lunch you went to on Monday?
Yeah. I challenged someone about not the TSA.
Someone who's going to be running for public office.
Yeah, the Patriot Act. And I wanted to know if that person was elected, would they introduce legislation demanding that the federal government not operate under the Patriot Act in the state of Alaska. We just had this judge, Superior Court judge, that threw out all this evidence because they said it violated the Constitution. So if that's violating us Alaska citizens, this is what I was asking them, would you as an Alaska legislator tell the federal government, who is violating your same citizens, that they cannot operate under the Patriot Act here? Because what is the difference? So one guy's bad if he does it, the other guy's okay. And he said, well, I don't really understand the Patriot Act. And he goes, I don't really understand the Constitution either. So that's it.
But at least he was honest.
I appreciate the honesty, but if you don't understand the Constitution, why on earth would you run for office when you're going to be required to swear an oath of fealty to the Constitution?
He's probably a really good guy too, and people are gonna probably go at him and the big conservative savior. I mean, all we look around here is, well, we got to get them Republicans in there to change the balance of power, so we can force what we want using the threat of violence over those stinking Democrats. What's the difference? There is no difference in them. None of them even understand. I mean, I'm over the Constitution. I'm pretty much over it. Okay, it's a waste of time because no one will stand up for it. The only way it works is if the citizens actually force the issue non-violently. I mean, we don't even have to use violence. We can use non-violently force the issue by grand juries, jury nullification, all these different things. We don't understand it, and we can surely tell that our legislators don't. They even admit they don't. You challenge them on it, they don't. They don't have a clue, but they're conservatives.
And it's not a campaign issue. If you're in a public forum and they said, "Oh, I don't really understand the Constitution," people in the audience would go, "Yeah, I don't either. I can relate to that guy." And whatever, that's fine, but don't expect great things when that's the status quo.
We have 4 lines on hold. Gentlemen, 458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Yeah, I hate to call back, but continue on your subject matter. But I just want to remind people, there's a Ron Paul meetup today at 5 o'clock at the Cornerstone Mall of the Cut and Run Beauty Shop, I believe. Am I correct, Dave?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
5 o'clock, so all you Ron Paul people, I hope you can make it today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Frank. 458 Talk is the number. This is Patriots Lament. Who's this?
This is Winston.
Winston, what's on your mind?
Frank Turney illustrates the point exactly right. This is not just something little young kids have come up with now. I mean, I've been waiting 40 years for the fight to start, and it ain't never started. There just never has been enough of us at the same time. Y'all keep talking. You're doing good.
Well, we definitely don't ever assume that we're bringing up something original. I mean, we're not. This is nothing that we're talking about is original at all. It's been progressing in a good way as time has gone on because people are getting enlightened to.
And remember, too, Winston, we're not advocating a fight. What we're saying is this, is that when they come and they bring the fight to us, for instance, when they impose something else on us that is unjust, we have a duty not to submit to it. That's, I think, the bottom line. And if they want to fight us over it, then they're the ones bringing the fight.
Even the conflict of ideas is a fact.
All right, good point.
Yeah, totally.
Good point.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean that's the thing. When I talk about the older generation, my parents' generation, whatever, the younger kids who have these different ideas, they're not new ideas. They're just rediscovering what's been ignored for so long. And I mean that's what's new.
It hasn't just been ignored, Dave. It's been suppressed. I mean, you think about the way education used to be, and what people actually not only were they taught to read, but they were required to read certain writings by people like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington or Thomas à Kempis or St. Augustine. I mean, you actually had some reading that happened, and now the kids are barely taught how to read anything at all, and most of the stuff that they are given to read is okay. Yeah, I got to watch my words here very carefully because I get very passionate about it, and sometimes things slip out that I don't necessarily I mean to say. Let me put it that way. We'll just put it down to this: is that there is a dumbing down that is very intentional in what is going on with the education system at large, because it keeps people from questioning these things that the government comes out and tells them to do.
A lot of it's voluntary complacency, too. The past generations have been very happy to give up their liberty, if you want to say that, for what they're getting. They're trading. It's a trade-off.
Well, they traded the future for their present.
Us.
Yeah, and which you can do, economically you can do that. That's what a loan is, right? You borrow money into the present out of the future. And, personally, there's no problem with that. The issue is they did that socially. They did that to an entire society.
To generations they'll never know.
Right, or even to generations they do know, but it shows how much they care about their kids.
Yeah.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
It's Cecily.
Hey, Cecily. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. They're attacking all the junkyard men, taking all their stuff and their treasures. The mayor and his thugs got 20 of people, but I just wanted people to think about what they're doing. If they didn't want something done to them that they are doing, then they better not do it in the first place, because what goes around comes around. And then
I've heard something like that before.
It just happens. It's natural law. I watched it, and I don't really want to spend the time about revenge because it's just natural. It's going to happen. But then I was thinking about all the oaths that they were taking to uphold the Constitution, and I thought, well, here's a poem for them. You know, it goes, I paid a dime to be well regarded, took an oath and only farted. Because, you know, an oath that isn't kept stinks.
All right, thanks, Cecily. I appreciate that. 458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Yeah, I have a question about this.
Wait, what's your name, sir?
Don.
Don, thank you. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, originally I believe that the Patriot Act was called the Terrorist Act, but they had to make it more palatable, so they changed the name to the Patriot Act. Is that not correct?
I'm not sure about that. I know Patriot is an acronym, and they were really straining to make it work.
Well, I know that's kind of why, that it should be what it is, which is a terrorist act, and I think that if people were realize what that means, they wouldn't be so apt to say, well, this is a patriot thing to do. Well, some of us that were here in '75 remember the Far North Patriots, and as soon as the pipeline was over, after taking advantage of Alaskan or Fairbanks folks, they were gone, and now here this hate, fear, and McCarthyism is coming back with some of the Tea Partiers and some of that group, and it's, they come around every 20, 30, 40 years, from what I see here in Fairbanks, and we just have to take them with a grain of salt. But thank you for your time.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Thank you.
By the way, USA Patriot, if you'd like to hear what it actually stands for, uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism act.
And who are the that's the funny part. I mean, if it was called a terrorism act in the beginning, who are the terrorists? We are, because now it's the Patriot Act, and who does it affect? Us.
The definition of terrorism is interesting. There's a British rapper who has a song, and he's asking the question, what is terrorism? And the dictionary definition is a individual or group who uses violence against civilians, including bombing, to achieve political ends. And so if we were to ask ourselves, what is the biggest group that's using the most bombs against civilians to achieve political ends in the world right now, what would our conclusion be?
The bad guys.
He's got a line in the song. Who's a bigger terrorist? A guy with an IED or oh crap, I'm gonna screw it up. Or BAE Systems or a guy with an IED, right? So BAE is British Aerospace Engineering. They mass manufacture bombs, right? What are bombs intended to do?
Blow up.
Not build bridges, but the other thing, blow them up, and in a big way, multi-ton, and an IED, that's intended to kill people also. So, neither one's good, but who's trying to kill more people to achieve political ends? I mean, and that's the dictionary definition of terrorism, if we want to get down to it.
I'm reading a book right now, actually, on the history of terrorism, and what's it called? Lessons from Terror is the name of the book. And it goes all the way back to Rome, as a matter of fact, because Rome regularly used terrorism on their enemies, only they called it destructive war. And the whole point being that you'd go out there and you would lay waste to your enemy, not just those who are fighting you, but their women, their children, their relatives, entire villages. You would absolutely plunder the land, destroy everything, kill everybody, to try to teach them a lesson. Historically speaking, every single group, whether it is a terrorist organization like Al-Qaeda or whether it is a military operation from a respected country, whichever side uses that method fails. Historically, it has always failed, and it has always led to the collapse of the group that has used that method. So just something to think about when you hear about, bomb went awry and blew up a baby diaper factory.
Right, or an aspirin factory.
Yeah, who was it that ordered those missiles fired? Who was it that ordered those bombs dropped?
Yeah.
And what's it going to do to the effect of the overall war, and who's going to lose?
Yeah, and it completely misses the definition of terrorism. If we even wanted to talk about that, there's Peter Schiff, who I've mentioned on the show before. He has this kind of saying that he throws out in his show. He says that every bill that goes before Congress or that Congress introduces should actually be named the opposite of what it is. It should be the truth in advertising law. So, a jobs bill would be an unemployment bill. An education bill would be, a dumbing down bill. The Patriot Act would be the terrorist act, like the caller called in. I'm gonna have to look that up to see if that was originally the name. That would be interesting and revealing. But
the income tax is called voluntary compliance.
Right, because you can choose to comply or go to jail.
Yeah,
it's totally voluntary. So, right, yeah, a revenue bill, it destroys revenue of the productive society.
Trying to think about that. That one guy was on the radio. What he was calling that? You remember, Steve, what he was calling taxes was some? I don't remember. He wasn't calling it a tax. It was something really funny.
By the way, I do have the Wikipedia background on the Patriot Act here. It says that it was originally called the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2001, introduced as the Provide Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act of 2001.
That's Patriot.
Yeah, that's Patriot. And then it was amended to United in Strengthening America Act.
USA.
So then you combine the two, man. USA Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Oh, we heard a guy right here on your studio a couple weeks ago when asked about the Patriot Act. He said, they need these tools.
That was an elected representative, by the way. Thank you, Steve Thompson. I'll go ahead and mention his name because it's on the recording. I mean, you can go back and listen to it. It's there in the archives.
You have to email me what show that is. I'll put it up on YouTube and we'll link it to the blog.
Okay. It shouldn't be hard for me to find it all here before we go. I'll be able to get that to you. 458-TALK is the number. We go back to the phones. Good morning. Welcome to Patriots Lament. Who's this?
Good morning, Miss Al.
Al, what's on your mind?
Do you guys know why elected officials or legislatures don't understand the Constitution or make it a priority to know it?
I think they don't care. But
do you have an idea, Al?
Well, my idea is can you name me a legislator that's ever been penalized for not upholding his oath of office?
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Excellent point. Lysander Spooner writes about that. He has this essay, No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. And he's dismantling the idea of social contract theory, and he does an extraordinarily good job. And that's one of the points he brings up, and that is an excellent point.
And
is that it can't be a contract if the people signing it or pledging to it aren't bound by it.
Yeah, and I think the other problem is we gave the judicial branch of the government the last say in anything pertaining to if something's constitutional or any law is constitutional.
Yeah, that was a problem. Originally, though, because they thought that a jury would decide that matter, and that's gone.
Then it's gone.
That's very gone. Plus, the other reason they don't want to follow it is because they don't have as much power that way. I mean, why do they want to follow it? You get Republicans in there, they want to pass laws. What did they do this last year? They passed law after law after law. They didn't actually balance the budget like they were supposed to, or present a budget like they were supposed to, but they sure made a lot of laws.
Yeah.
And we're safer because of it, Al. And you know it.
Wait, no. I feel really, really safe because the governor made a declaration this week. What was that?
The Alaska Traffic Safety Awareness Month.
Yes.
All of November.
November is Traffic Safety Awareness Month. I feel safer already just because the governor made that declaration.
There's so many whereases in it. It makes you puke. Whereas we know if you run into a brick wall in your car at 90 miles an hour, you will die. So whereas we will make a law saying don't do that. Yeah. It's a joke. But So we all feel safer because he did that. But at the same time, the federal government is allowed to destroy whatever they want.
Well, and
whoever they want. Al, in our state, we don't care.
Al, would you agree or disagree with this statement, that the reason why we have so many laws is because so many people ask for laws to be created that they don't understand in the first place what they're asking for?
Yes.
Yeah.
There ought to be a law against that.
There ought to be a law against making it. Thank you very much, Josh. Thanks, Al. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. This is Patriots Lament. All right, they didn't hold. We got just a couple minutes left in the show, gentlemen. It comes to the end quickly. We gave one action point earlier today about that book. Do you remember the name of the title again of that book?
Yeah, it's The Betrayal of the American Right, and it's by Murray Rothbard. I'll link to it on the blog. I know it's in print right now. I think you can download the PDF of it for free, possibly. But I will link to that on the blog. And there's some excerpts of it on the net that have been on LouRockwell.com.
Let me take it a step farther than simply reading, because I mean reading is a very important step that people skip over entirely too much. I mean, you look at what's going on with the Occupy Wall Street movement right now. How many of those people really fully understand what the organizers want to do?
I don't think the organizers understand what they want to do. I think they see something is wrong and they want to do something, and we get wrapped up in that. Somebody should do something, and then when we do, we go out and do it without examining our premises and things like that.
Exactly. So can we give an action point of something that we can go out and do this week that does not necessarily require reading first?
People need to define who they are, define the terms for their own selves. I mean, you're a conservative, what does that mean? You're liberal, what does that mean? You need to define who you are, then you know what you can stand up for.
Why do you call yourself a conservative? Why do you call yourself a liberal? Why do you call yourself a libertarian?
Right.
Why?
The introspection, right? Look inside. I mean, that's the first step before we can do anything.
So here's our action point. Go have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a nice glass of hot water and think this afternoon about how you would define yourself and why.
Pontificate.
Yeah. Pontificate.
No, yeah, I mean, it sounds deep, but that's important. That's important, totally.
All right, thanks, gentlemen, for being here. Once again, the contact information, the website is?
The website is patriotslament.blogspot.com, and the email is patriotslament@gmail.com.
All right, and we will be back here again next Saturday at 10 a.m. In the meantime, we've got Health Talk coming up next, followed by Dave Ramsey at noon, and then later on this evening, we've got the National Geographic program right here on KFAR. We are Local Talk Radio, 660 on your AM dial. Have a great Saturday. Get out there and enjoy some of the snow.